So I was watching the new season of The Mandalorian, which is getting increasingly not good, but I'll let other YouTubers talk about the actual show. Oh, I could make a 5-hour long video about the show itself, but I'm not going to. Or will I? But anyway, I start to notice for the first time how weird the stars look. Or at least the out-of-focus bokeh stars. The more I get into cinematography and filmmaking, the more I start to notice this kind of stuff. And I wouldn't say it's something that starts to ruin movies and TV shows, but it is something that sometimes makes you go, Oh boy. But anyway, you have the Mando, you have a Starfield, but then you have this oval anamorphic bokeh, and that's just not right. But Adam, The Mandalorian was shot with anamorphic lenses. The old Star Wars films were shot with anamorphic lenses, specifically Panavision C-Series lenses, which was the look of more classic Hollywood films than you might realize. But there's oval bokeh all over those old Star Wars movies. Take a look. Beep bop boop. So what's the problem? Well, I'm not going to go back and watch Star Wars for the 42nd time, but the problem is that the stars in Star Wars, even the out-of-focus ones, used to be round, so oval ones just look f***ing weird. I'm talking about the original trilogy here, and the prequels too, I guess. But the postquels, the sequels, the JJ movies have the same problem. Maybe that's why the cinematography in them doesn't feel like genuine Star Wars movies. At least not to me. And millions of other salty nerds, I'm sure. But what the Dinjarin am I even talking about? Well, take a look at these two shots side by side here. They're completely different looks. And let's just get past the fact that stars probably wouldn't be showing up at all if you had your exposure set for anything approaching sunlight, because black skies in a movie with stars in the title would look even more weird. But why the difference? Well, most of Star Wars might have been shot with anamorphic lenses, but the visual effects definitely weren't. They weren't even shot on Super 35, they were shot on VistaVision film with, from what I can gather, Nikon stills lenses. And I won't go into too much detail as to why, but let's just say they were using VistaVision film, which unlike movie film, which is run vertically, it's run horizontally like stills photographic film, which gives you a cleaner look and less film grain. But up until recently, nobody was making lenses to cover VistaVision film, except for, the old VistaVision lenses themselves, which you might have seen used on a few classic Hollywood movies, such as North by Northwest, Vertigo, and The Searchers. And so there weren't ever a lot of these lenses ever made, and thus they had to adapt stills photography lenses like Nikons in order to cover the frame size of the VistaVision film. And the reason they chose Nikons was because vintage Nikon lenses were, and still are, sharp, reliable, awesome lenses.
I'm Ken Rockwell.
I built my vintage lens set around these Nikons, and some people will say, oh, those aren't real cinema lenses, but when it comes to visual effects work from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they kinda are. But anyway, spherical lenses produce nice, round, natural-looking bokeh, not oval, but I'm gonna say it probably doesn't matter because back in the day they were probably stopping the lenses down to give themselves a nice deep depth of field. In order to keep shots consistent in focus and to avoid nightmare production problems. And that's not really a correct look either, but I'm fine with it. Take a look at these shots from A New Hope. The foreground is barely in focus, probably because they're using a wider aperture with a longer focal length, and the C-Series lenses themselves might have been a tad soft. But the background matte is completely sharp and in focus. And technically it shouldn't be. It should be blurry, but either it works because it adds to the slightly unreal fantasy nature of the film, or more likely you just don't notice it because you're engaged by the story, the action, what's happening on screen. By the time The Phantom Menace rolled around, the technology had caught up with computers and whatnot, so the background is more correct, more out of focus, more bulky, but still around. And Lucas was still using anamorphic lenses to shoot the prequels. Hawk lenses this time, but still anamorphic. And I'm pretty sure that the prequels were shot in front of green screens and the visual effects work was done digitally. So these were choices the VFX artist, the B-team director, or maybe even Lucas himself had to make about how the out-of-focus stars should look. Should they be round or should they be stretched to match the anamorphic footage from the rest of the film? Because I'm pretty sure they could have got anamorphic bokeh digitally. But they didn't. Now we have The Mandalorian, and for the first time you can project visual effects in 360 degrees of freedom using Unreal Engine and capture all that in camera. You don't have to composite anymore. Now we can finally have oval anamorphic bokeh in Star Wars, naturally, just through the innate properties of the lens. Hooray.
Oh, thank God.
That's what they chose to do. That's what JJ chose to do with The Force Awakens too, but was it the right choice? Honestly, for The Mandalorian, it could work because The Mandalorian is, or at least it was, a different kind of Star Wars show. The first season was great. It was basically just an episodic space western, so either I didn't notice it back then, or I didn't care, or maybe the weird oval anamorphic bokeh helped to set the show apart from old Star Wars, make it feel different, huh? But now I do notice it because The Mandalorian is a boring snooze fest, which doesn't bring it any closer to the old Star Wars films, but maybe it brings it a little bit closer to the new ones. You know, the ones that incidentally also have oval bokeh because J.J. Flarams is the king of anamorphic exploitation. Wow. George Lucas wasn't shooting into strong backlights just to get flares, and maybe John Carpenter did it once or twice, but he didn't do it through the whole goddamn movie. But now my brain does have time to notice these things because it doesn't care about what's happening on screen. It's not engaged by anything really. Which is weird because visual effects are more seamless than they've ever been, but when I watch J.J. Abrams' Star Wars or The Mandalorian, now being directed by whoever, I can't help but notice the weird cinematography, the bad directing and editing choices, because my brain is bored. Needs to find something to do, something to latch onto while these quote-unquote films with their subpar plots and shallow characters are stepping through their charade of a runtime. Maybe that's part of the appeal of older movies, special effects films from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. Sure, some of the effects are wonky. In a movie like Ghostbusters, 1984, the effects were especially wonky because they were rushed and splicing test shots into the movies, but does anyone care? No, because Ghostbusters is a good film. It's entertaining, has great performances, the characters go through lows and highs. It's a movie, just like Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope is a movie. Modern films, the effects are nearing perfection, but I'm not even sure what they are. I'm not sure you can even call them movies, at least not from a storytelling perspective. Things happen, there's explosions, anamorphic flares, oval bokeh, good sound design, great lighting, but it's all just so much sound and fury. But even when I work on my own stuff, crappy little YouTube videos that nobody watches, which can sometimes be their own little mini films with heavy editing, multiple camera setups, and even storyboards, there's always the temptation to endlessly perfect things. But you have to know when good is good enough. If you're trying to tell an interesting story with deep characters that people care about and engaging dialogue, then so much can be forgiven and so much ends up not mattering. But otherwise, a lot of the videos on YouTube that I enjoy are just some guy talking over repurposed footage, and a lot of that can be more entertaining than whatever crap Hollywood's been pumping out over the last couple of decades. But if not, if your movie's boring, your characters don't have anything to do, then all people like me are going to end up noticing is the plot holes, the bad acting, the stars that are oval instead of circles that somehow seem out of place, somehow different from the films we remember watching when we were kids. And maybe we can't place our fingers on exactly why or what the difference really is, but somewhere deep down inside we do notice. Or whatever. It's fine. As my friend Ron used to say, they're just kids' movies anyway, but shouldn't his nickname be Manda, not Mando? Hello, Vader!
Gee, I sure would like to grow up and be a Jedi frog like my father. If only a beautiful princess would send for me so I could leave home and save the universe. Wow! My dreams have come true! A new trash can!
No, man, you're thinking of beep, boo, boo, bop, boo, boo, bop.